And we are back for another edition of Sunday Night AstroLive. Let me ditch the earbuds for now, and we might bring the earbuds back later in the show if people feel like they want to jump on and talk about tonight's subject matter, which is primarily about the movie. There we go. Patterns. And first of all, I want to thank everybody that jumped on board and watched the movie. It seemed like a number of you were into it. You actually did it. You watched it, and the response to the film was pretty enthusiastic. And I think it's an interesting and I think it's an important movie on a number of levels. And there's some just mind-blowing astrological angles that are connected to this film that I wasn't really expecting. And just to give you an idea as to what my, kind of thought process or how I determine, what we're going to talk about on a Sunday night, sometimes I don't really know until maybe Friday. Sometimes Friday I'll get an idea, or maybe Saturday I'll get an idea. I had an idea of where we could go tonight, which was I was going to explore this whole idea of the black pill more, and I was going to wrap it in an astrological context, which I might towards the end of tonight's show. But then I sat down and I watched this movie today, which I had never seen before. And the movie in question is Patterns from 1956. And it was written by Rod Serling. And, I just love the name Patterns because I'm into, like a lot of you, we're into patterns. And I have Pallas. Pallas is the asteroid of pattern recognition. And I have Pallas in Capricorn, and it's almost exactly conjunct Saturn in my chart. So I have this interesting desire to understand patterns at kind of a socio-political, geopolitical perspective. And that's kind of what a lot of the things that I do kind of boil down to. Even this whole idea around the black pill, it falls into that category of seeing larger patterns in the culture and how they permeate to us and through us from a political perspective, a meta-political or geopolitical perspective, and even to a certain degree, a socioeconomic / political perspective. So patterns really got my attention. And then I hit play and I started to watch the video. And from the opening sequence, it got my attention. And we're going to get into the opening sequence and we're going to break down the movie because here we are, it's Labor Day, we're in Virgo, and Virgo plays a really important role in this whole idea of labor and consumption and production and reward. When I was in elementary school, I remember I think being maybe in the first grade or the second grade. I can't remember which grade. I'm going to go with maybe first grade, and they were indoctrinating us, or it's kind of a heavy word. They were educating us about the differences between a producer and a consumer. And the producer was always somebody that was involved in some form of production, whether they were in a factory, whether they were, working on a ring, or whether they were a farmer. And then they had the consumer. It was somebody shopping through a supermarket, or was somebody sitting at home having dinner, or somebody taking in some kind of entertainment, right? And so there were all these pictographs, and we were taught who a producer was and who a consumer was. And in a lot of ways, that was the model of the education system that had been set up by the Rockefellers, which was for people to understand their role in society, that in order to be a productive member of society, you had to have a balance between production and consumption. I mean, that was really sort of the underlying theme of that little walkthrough, through grade school. And then everything else is a byproduct. Now, this is long since past. This model of the Rockefeller education about finding your place in the system and being a productive member of society so you can consume at a level that's commensurate with your production has long since gone. It's flown the coop. And there's been a radical redefining of, number one, what education is, and number two, what society is. So a movie like Patterns may not mean as much today in some ways, but in other ways, it still means everything, because what it does is it takes a look at this idea of the corporation and the corporation becoming an entity unto itself. Now, this is really happening during the post-war America, where there's an incredible amount of growth, an incredible amount of industrialization. And it follows another movie that debuts 2 years earlier called Executive Suite, which I'm going to talk a little bit about with William Holden. And both movies are tackling this idea of the corporate spirit, or the corporate monad, the thing that has a thing unto itself. Now, in Executive Suite, the outcome is quite different than the outcome of Patterns. And I'll get into the difference between the two, but the majority of tonight's show is going to be dedicated to this movie, which I find really fascinating from a cultural perspective and from an astrological perspective. It's going to, I think, really kind of open our eye. Now, does Rod Serling, who wrote the script, does he know about astrology? Does he name his characters accordingly? Or is it something that just permeates through the creative process, and that astrology is like an archetypal projection onto the screen of our world? So we're gonna explore some of those themes tonight as we break down Patterns. And for those of you who watched it, I'd be really interested in your perspective and how you've thought about the movie and how it hit you. Because what's interesting about movies and art is, like, somebody can watch a movie and they can have a certain takeaway because there's a character in the movie that they find sympathetic, or there's a character in the movie that they find is revolting, or they don't align with, and so therefore they'll align with other people that are constellated around that character, right? Or there may be some people who might actually relate to an unlikable character. And I've always found that when I watch movies, if I go back and watch it, just like a book, if you read a book once, you'll get a certain meaning out of it. And if you read it again, you'll go, oh, wow, I may have missed this. And if you read it again, you may find even more details. It's the same with movies. And it's the same with art. When you look at a painting, when you look at it the second and the third time, well, the painting is still the same, but you're different. And you might find something inside of that painting that didn't stand out as much the last time you saw it, because maybe you're at a time in your life where something in the foreground really captured you and you said, oh, wow, isn't this beautiful? And then you look at something in the background now that I didn't notice this before. And maybe it's because there's something that you've gone through in your life which makes that detail stand out even more. So it's really fascinating how we interpret art. And in many ways, it's a very subjective experience. Although I do think at times that there is an objective meaning with something. And I'm going to try to tackle the objective meaning of Patterns, even though I think there are lots of different takeaways that would be valid. So my interpretation of the movie should not invalidate your interpretation of the movie whatsoever. It's just that my interpretation is based on what I saw put together. So if you're into it, after I go through some of this stuff and we look at the movie, not in whole, but some of the elements to it, and you want to chime in and give your feedback on it, you can do so. I'll put the link in, and I'd love to be able to open it up and not only just talk about the movie, but where are we with work? Where are we with labor? Where are we with things like artificial intelligence? And I know a lot of people say, well, it's a bunch of bullshit and it's not going to replace people. I would beg to differ. I am not an artist, and I created tonight's thumbnail on AI, which was, I did it maybe about, I don't know, 5 minutes after I went through a bunch of different copies. Is that the one that I ultimately wanted? I don't know, but it worked, right? It worked. And I think that AI is a threat to people in graphics and design in their work. I'm just going to be straight up, because somebody like myself, I can put together a few things in Photoshop, which, by the way, Adobe does not let me use anymore unless I rent it from them. I can put together a few things in Photoshop. I'm good with, like creating PNGs and putting them in interesting backgrounds and stuff. So I have the ability to create thumbnails that could be, good for this medium, right? But there are times when it's like I want a push or a punch or something, and I don't have those skills. Like, I don't have the skill to sit down. I put out something on Twitter, I don't know, about 2 weeks ago. It was about Kamala. I called her Kalimala, and the AI created like a version of Kamala as a dark Kalima, right? And I couldn't have done that. There's no way. So AI saved me the time and the effort from hiring somebody in that pinch and in that moment. And I do think it will begin to creep in and infiltrate the world that we're living in. And I've been talking about this for a long time. I think one of the areas that's going to hit the most is customer service. We start off with customer service in the United States. If you're in the United States, if you're somewhere else in the world, let's say you're in Australia or England or Germany, and you buy products in your country, right? By and large, if you're an English-speaking country, you'll get somebody you used to get somebody who spoke English, and somebody who was from the company. It probably worked in the country that you lived in, that you bought it in. And eventually that changed, and customer service got moved into different places. And we've all had the experience of talking to somebody from India or the Philippines. Mostly it's the Philippines now, but we've all had that experience. And so it starts with the language, your native language, based generally in your country. And by the way, there are still customer service people that work in this country that, they work at home, or they work for a company and they actually go in and they'll do a customer service job. That's not to say that those jobs still aren't available. They are, because I know people that do them. And those jobs are going away because it starts with outsourcing. And then the outsourced countries, they will be eliminated at a certain point because AI can go through, and they've had this for years now. They've just been, it's the equivalent of going from a society that doesn't have electricity to a society that does have electricity. Like, all of a sudden, everything that went before it is diminished to some degree. So they've been sitting on these customer service tools for roughly the last 5 to 6 years, and they've perfected them to go 10, 11, 12 layers deep in complexity in terms of questions. They can dial up any language, that they'll sense your language, they'll hear what you're speaking, they'll convert that customer service right into the language that you're speaking in. This has all been done. It's all baked. It's all ready to go. But when it happens, it will create a cascade effect across one of the last sectors of the service community, right, or the service workforce, that has been relatively untouched by this kind of massive outsourcing, because it is the frontier of outsourcing, the final frontier of outsourcing. So that's part of the discussion. AI is definitely part of the discussion. And will it at some point approximate the things that we will do? Sure. I don't think there's anything stopping from AI from writing code, right? All it is a program, and you could write a program to write code. That's not a problem. So again, this is a larger existential question that we're dealing with right now. Like the change, the precipice of change and the pivot of our world and our economy and our labor into an area that is, for all intents and purposes, a real unknown, right? And there are certain things that humans will be able to do that cannot be replicated. Like somebody coming into your house and fixing your toilet. You can't hire an AI to do that. You can't. There are just certain functions of human labor, at least at this point, that you can't replicate. Now, in a Build Back Better world where everything is torn down, and then they have this new system that is created, and that new system has a lot of AI servo mechanic protocols built into it, that's different. But the world that we're living in now needs people. And it needs people to still continue to do basic functions to keep this thing called civilization and society alive, right? But there are going to be movies that will tackle this very topic, just like Patterns tackled this topic of the corporate soul back in 1956, in dealing with this existential question of humanity and what happens to humanity as the gears of progress grind forward towards greater and greater models of efficiency and scale. And that's really what I feel is at the heart of Patterns. And we'll get into it more as we go through the show. And as I said, we'll take a little bit of a stop at Executive Suite to sort of give a primer, because this is going on. Like, this is happening in the mid to late 50s. Things are starting to ramp up. And America is starting to take on this feeling of being a juggernaut. And people are like, well, what's going to happen to us? Or as these corporations get bigger and bigger and bigger, as they buy out more corporations, which, by the way, is a backstory in Patterns. It's starting to get into this existential dread. Is my job safe? Is the company that I work for going to be able to exist on its own? Or is some big fish going to swallow the little fish? And what happens when the big fish does swallow the little fish? And we've seen the modern equivalent of that. We saw this with Paul Singer, when Paul Singer bought Bass Pro Shops. And what Paul Singer did is he forced a hostile takeover of Cabela's. And it ruined Cabela's. And not only did it ruin Cabela's, but Cabela's was a company town, right? There was a whole town that was built around Cabela's. And once Paul Singer went in and essentially swallowed Cabela's and brought it into Bass Pro Shops, it had a seismic effect on that community. And that's also a part of the story in Patterns, where this larger company goes in to buy a smaller company in Oregon. And there's a whole dialogue about, well, what happens to the workers? What happens to the company town? We'll get into that. We'll talk about it as we tackle the movie. But I really feel like this is an important theme, especially as we sit here on Labor Day, where, again, it's the sign of Virgo, and we're talking about, where do we put our time? Where do we put our energy? Where do we put our effort? And is it even worth it now? Are we headed towards a society that would be based on universal basic income? And if so, what does that look like? And do we even really want to be a part of it? And do we have a choice? Do we have a choice? And if we don't have a choice, or if we do have a choice, then what does that choice look like? I mean, I think these are all really, really big questions that we're dealing with. And I don't know if you follow me on Twitter at all, but I've been getting into it with what I call the Black Pill Mafia. And just for the sake of naming some names, right? The Black Pill Mafia is James Corbett, Whitney Webb, Derek Bros. We'll throw in the Last Vagabond, and then the outlier, which would be David Icke, who is nothing. Well, he's very much like them, but he's not like them. David Icke's from a different generation. David Icke is a baby boomer, and all the four that I mentioned, besides David Icke, are Pluto and Scorpio. And so one of the things that I came away with, well, first of all, I had it with the Black Pill people. I just had it because I felt like they were bullies. And it was the same feeling that I used to get when I lived in California. And I would hang out with people from Marin County. David Wolf was kind of in this mix at that time. I didn't really know David all that well. I had lunch with him one time. He was a super nice guy, by the way. When I had lunch with him, I really liked him. But I would attend parties and I met David again later in Houston, but not Houston, but Fredericksburg. But I would attend parties with sort of the David Wolf universe in Marin County at that time. And my sense was that there was this overriding sense of spiritual elitism with that crowd. And it had to do with everything from the car you drove to the food that you ate to the condiments that were in your refrigerator. Why do I know this? Because I had a girlfriend at that time that was sort of in the concentric circle of that world. And I got judgment from all those things. I was driving a Yukon, a GMC Yukon, and I got chided for it because it was a gas guzzler. And we needed to drive cars that were more economical to save the environment. Oh, I get chided for the condiments in my refrigerator. And it's like, enough of this already. And it spilled over into this sense that they were in a bubble and they had the definition of the things that they agreed upon culturally. And that if there were people outside of that, it was almost as if they didn't exist. And if they did exist, then they were cast out in some ways, right? Like they didn't matter because they weren't fit enough or enlightened enough, or they didn't eat the right kale smoothie. What's interesting is that a lot of these people who were vegans at the time have moved away from that because it was really unhealthy. And now they're all meat, right? They're all meat people. A lot of them are carnivore people, or at the very least, they're paleo because they got really sick and their bodies needed, these essential fats and butter and all the things that go along with it. So I used to experience the sense of, of spiritual elitism. And I began to relate more to flyover than I did to these people. And eventually it landed me in Texas, where I got to live with flyover. And it's been an interesting experience. And I would say that the people in Texas have been, unless they find out I'm an astrologer, that's a different conversation. But the people in Texas I've found to be very friendly and open. And as long as you deal with them on a respectful level, they'll be the same with you. And there's not a lot of judgment. And I've also found that there are people in Texas that are incredibly unhealthy, and that maybe they could take a few lessons from the people from California. And I'm not saying that they should be vegans, but maybe they could take a few lessons from that world, because that's the one thing that I've walked away from in Texas and in flyover is there's a lot of really unhealthy people, and a lot of it has to do with the food that we eat, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're just not educated, and in many cases they get into this vicious cycle of not feeling good, and then they eat food that makes them feel better, but in actuality it makes them feel worse. And it's also, unfortunately, also a socioeconomic issue. The other day I was coming out of the gym, and I must have noticed at least 5 cars in the Dairy Queen drive-through. This is at dinner time. I'm thinking to myself, this is a horrible fucking dinner. But then again, I put myself in their shoes. Maybe they've worked really hard all day. They don't want to feel like eating dinner. Maybe they're a single parent, right? There's a lot of things that are on the table that if you really step back and say, okay, this person is taking the path of least resistance, and it's terrible for them, and it's toxic for them, and it's poisonous for them, but it's the path of least resistance. And on some level, I understand it and get it, but on another level, it's not going to be very good for them. But getting back to the whole black pill thing, it has that feeling, right? It has that feeling where there's the sense of you check these boxes here, 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 and here. And if you check those boxes with them, then you're a part of their world. But if you don't check those boxes and you don't fully believe in what they believe in, or if you push back on the, what's the word I'm looking for, the catechism of what they believe in and the absolutism of what they believe in, then all of a sudden you're branded. You're branded as a bootlicker of the system, or you've embraced the draconian and you can't let it go, right? Or you may as well just go hang out with Trump and go, or you're a boomer, right? It's all these ad hominem attacks. And I said on Twitter last week that the black pill is a covert form of censorship. And ever since then, these people have been proving me correct, that all they want to do is shut you down, and they will stoop to an ad hominem attack because you just don't see it. You don't see through the uniparty. You don't see through the duopoly. You don't see through the corruption. You don't see through all. Well, how do you know that we don't see that? You're taking a lot of liberties by just assuming that we don't see through that. It's arrogant. It's completely arrogant. And it's incredibly dismissive of people who do see through it. And are we banging our drum and goose stepping, in line with Donald Trump and Peter Thiel and J.D. Vance? Not necessarily, no. We're not necessarily doing that. But what I'm doing is I'm saying, you're not the final authority on the state of the world. I'm sorry, you're not. And if you are, then the state of the world is pretty dark and bleak. If that's the case, then why are we even here? And what are we even doing here? Maybe we should just all either tap out or, drink a cyanide margarita. To me, that's the end game of the black pill. There's nothing to believe in. And I suppose if you go down that rabbit hole and you get into the kind of this, sort of existential Sartre sort of universe, right, where there's no meaning and everything is black and there's nothing to live for, then maybe, just maybe, you might punch through the other side when there's no sense of anybody coming to save you, right? It's like, but that's incredibly extreme. And for most people, here's another thing. This is what I've noticed with black pill people. Whitney Webb does have kids, so I'm going to leave her a little bit out of this. But a lot of times they don't have kids. They don't have kids. So their investment in the future is really tainted. Because if you have kids, you can't get all black pill. Like, again, I don't know how she raises her kids when she feels like the world is doomed. It's none of my business, right? She's a parent. She'll parent her kids whatever way she wants. But as a parent, can you afford to go down that path? Well, you can if you're with other parents and you say, we're going to tap out of the world and we're going to create something new. But my sense is that this whole black pill conversation, well, there is a lot to learn, and you can really get into the bowels of corruption and connection with the black pill sort of deconstructionists. Right? I'm not saying there isn't something to learn there, but my feeling is that it also stems from this existential dread that there is no future, right? That it is a cul-de-sac, and that this is a byproduct of the cul-de-sac. Now I know people are like talking about the people's reset and bug out and build or whatever. That's good. Right, I'm all for it. If that's what your solution is, God bless you. That's what being here in this world is about. It's the American dream, right? It is theoretically what we're here to do. If you don't like it, change the channel, do something different, pioneer a new world, go for it, right? Go for it. My beef is that along the way, they're going to take, rabbit punches and bully shots at people who don't agree with them and who don't agree with their paradigm. And I don't like it, because what it is it's covert censorship, and you can get canceled. If you are not black-pilled enough, you'll get canceled. And it's without any real sense of prima facie evidence that you're just some fucking shill for the system, right? There is, in some ways, they're as programmed as people that are in the Me Too movement, or hey, you're racist, right? It's all a reflection of this ad hominem attack on the other. And I'm kind of over it. Are there things that the black pill can teach us? Sure. But unless you want to go all the way to the bottom of the drain and find out what's down there and go through the other side, we may want to have a different kind of pill. Now, am I advocating the red pill? Well, I'm not advocating any pill, to be honest with you. What I'm advocating is that we have a mutable, facile, and agile relationship with reality. That's what I'm advocating. And everything is under review at any given moment in time. And I reserve the right to withhold judgment for a period of time as something is happening inside the system. I have that right. Right? I can withhold judgment. I can choose to judge something. I can choose to say, I don't like this, but I like this. And the two are not mutually exclusive. You see, that's the other thing, right? It's the ability to be able to hold two viewpoints at once, which breaks most people's brains. And so if you're black-pilled, you just have one viewpoint. Or if you're just red-pilled, you just have one viewpoint. Or if you're blue-pilled, you just have one viewpoint. But in order to really be functional in this world, in this realm at a high level, you can hold multiple viewpoints. And each one of them is something that you can pull from. And you don't have to be a card-carrying member of any of them. That's my point. That is my point. So my feeling is that as we move towards this onslaught of perhaps a new model of mechanization, a new model of artificial intelligence, a new model of a world that is shifting rapidly, that a lot of what's coming up is the eruption of an existential dread. And that the idea is that we're going to go in and we're going to find the cancer, and we're going to pull the cancer out, or at least we're going to expose the cancer, so that our existential dread, the thing that we cannot control in life, right, is going to be smoothed over. The hard edges of our glacial existential dread will be smoothed over, because by somehow knowing this, we'll have more control. But even that, I believe, is a pretty big illusion. I was going to save it to the end, but I got here at the beginning. So let's see who's in here. Give up all the pills. Or is that a black pill? Pill friends, or give up all the pills. Yeah. You don't have to be a black pill person. You don't have, but you can. See, to me, this has always been the great conundrum, right? The great conundrum, which is, we live in a world that's dualistic. Well, we do. Well, guess what? We live in a non-dual world as well. What do you mean a non-dual world? We're both, right? We're both. We can move. We can change our perspective. We can take things from one thing and another thing. We can say, hey, let's see where this goes. And at a certain point in time, if we don't like it, we can say something about it. Or, there may be something we don't like, and somewhere down like, wow, this was really interesting. I didn't know this existed. I didn't see it from this perspective. I'm in. I like it, right? That's where I'm coming from. And people like WW are saying, give up the pills. I don't know if she's saying that. I don't know if she's saying give up the pills. She's very rigorous in her ideas. I'm sorry. She's rigorous in her ideas. And the reason she's rigorous in her ideas is because This is my experience with Whitney Webb, and you could have your own. She provides a lot of information, but I watched Whitney Webb basically download on Jimmy Dore for about 90 minutes, and at the end of it, well, what do we do? And what did she say? Well, not much. Is that it? He said, yeah, that's it. Like, to me, that was not very interesting. She had all the ties and all the connections. Whitney Webb could take you into the jungle of corruption, but she can't lead you out. Sorry, she can't. Not only that, she doesn't live in the United States. And most of these people don't. James Corbett lives in Japan. Derek Burrows says he lives in Houston, Mexico. Probably lives a little more in Mexico. But a lot of these people, even David Icke doesn't even live in the fucking United States. So, have some skin in the game if you're going to go there. Anyway, let's go back. Let's go all the way back. All the way back. All the way back. Okay. Let's see who's here tonight. Terry Marine, BMF is here. Hi, Terry. Miss Nikki, Kelly B, Susie G, Tom Jordan. Yes, please. I'd like to get to 1,500. I'd like to get to 15,000 subscribers by the time I turn 65. So please hit like, subscribe. There's my man Ryan. What's going on, Ryan? What's happening? Let's see. Road Trip 1981. I was number 30. Mark S is here. Hey, listen. If you didn't see Mark S on Friday's show, go back and check him out. And we also had Drake Woods on the show, who was a young guy. A lot of you signed up for his channel and have been interacting with him. That's been really interesting to watch. So that's cool. And Mark S has a new book out. If you go to Friday's show, the link is there. Maybe Tom or Ryan or one of the mods could put a link in to his book, and that'd be really great if you could get a couple copies of Mark's book. Yes, you can buy me coffee there. I'm working on a thank you coffee list. It's coming. Yes, please come to Harvest Moon, October 4th and 6th. And it's shaping up to be a very cool weekend. I'll be there, and our good friend Mario from Symbolic Studies will be there, and he'll be doing a presentation on Libra and Venus. He'll just be coming off of his marriage, although his bride won't be there. So he'll be kind of floating on a Venusian sort of hyperwave. We're going to have Jock, our good friend Jock Doubleday, is going to be there, and we're going to help him debut a world debut for one of his plays. Oh, I know that sounds like fun to all you introverts. Trust me, it'll be good. Jock's a magician. He's a wizard. We're going to get something really cool out of this. How often do you get to be a part of a debut, a world debut for a play? Come on now. Darlena, our human design wizardess, she'll be here as well on Sunday. It's going to be a really great time. It'll be great weather. DJ Pebblestone is going to DJ. We're going to have a great time. So please come join us. And I've decided to keep the rate as it is until September 15th. So there you go. Susie G is there. That is one intense movie. It was intense. It was good, right? Fucking good movie. Sharon Lewis is here. Hi, Sharon. DC Jones. She did her homework. What's up, fantastic? Peter Bayonne. Checking in from Vero Beach. Jer McKenzie. Jer is a very interesting person, I have to say. Very, very interesting person. Good to see you. Rod Serling was a genius, without a doubt. Absolutely. It's weird. We forgot we'd enter September. Here we are. Here we are. We do have a Telegram group, so if you are coming to the event, you can join our Telegram group. And if you need to share a room, Tom will help you out. He'll hook you up. My man, who gives homework assignments on Labor Day weekend? Well, it could have been worse. It could have been worse. Yours truly. Let's see. Who else do we have? Maria Delange. There she is, checking in from France. Good to see you. Bonjour, bonjour, bonjour. There will be no quiz. Benito Dio, Brandy Herrera. What's happening, Brandy? My man, the shadow. What's up, Benito? Good to see you. I'm going to call you this week, Benito. We have a lot to talk about in a good way. I couldn't make out what he mumbled in the end. Anyone? Let's see, Claire. Oh, fuck, mate, I'm late. It's good when, yeah, I got a little bit of a slow start today. Hi, Claire. There she is, the lovely and talented one. And I am I'm beaming from the lovely and talented one's abode. Noga movement. Hey, what's happening, Noga? Athena, yes, you did make it. Let's see, who else do we have? Shelly Meyer. Hi, Shelly. Good to see you. Is Sharpela still doing the debate? I don't know, man, but that interview did not go over well, did it? Did not go over well. They had to chop it. Look at that. Sharon, finally have employment, getting my first paycheck. Let's give a round of applause to Sharon Lewis. Good job, Sharon. Sam, Astroman, he's here. All right, who else? Let's see. Did I say hi to Kelly B? I'll say hi again. Artist here, watching patterns until we start. Okay, cool. Michael, a little late on the take today, brother, but we're glad you're here. Good to see you. Misbehaving too. What's happened? Jeff Rosen, brother Jeff. I hope you're staying on the thin line. Jeff's like the razor. He's like the snail that's climbing the edge of a razor right now. And we love you, Jeff, and we sincerely hope that you get to the edge of that razor. Let's see, in a good way, not in a bad way. Esther Swift made it to the live. Watch the movie. Thank you, Virgo Stellium. Virgo's getting a little bit out of that movie, I think. Mindy Beth is here. Hi, Mindy Beth. BK, Danny Katz in the house. What's happened to Danny? Let's see, Carly. My take on a movie, a corporate job will kill you. Killed somebody. Didn't kill everybody. We're going to get into it. I think my take on that film might be a little bit different. See, it's one of those things, right? Everybody's going to have a different sort of perspective on it. When we put it all together, we might be able to fill out the entire picture. Thor at the door, my man Steve is here. Giselle H is here. Hi, Giselle. Let's see. Tandar, what should I feed the baby? How about some CBD? Let's see. I missed the news. I think I may have seen this movie before, though. Maybe. I only watched the first hour. I saw your request too late. That's fine. You can go back and watch it. If you saw the first hour, you're only like 21 minutes away from the end. Let's get a real estate update from Lewis. Lowest amount of pending transactions in a week since 2008. Jeez. Excuse me. That includes the week in March 2020 when COVID happened. Prices down depending on location. That's been a trend that's been happening for a while. Thank you, Lewis, for that update. Let's see. Jerry McKenzie, I'm a pattern person. Olivia Provorce, watch the movie. Cool. Excellent. Let's see. You got a little palace check-in. Cancer, Sagittarius. Lemma Spain's got the mac and cheese and yogurt tonight. I used to put yogurt in mac and cheese. It was really plain yogurt, mac and cheese, killer app. Totally killer app. Gives it a nice texture, especially the Greek yogurt. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Kabuki Theater. What's going on, Bo? Good to see you. Oh, Catherine Rosen. Her daughter's birthday is today. Her solar return has Pluto Aquarius, yay. Tonight, Pluto drops back into Capricorn. Here we go. We're talking about patterns. We're talking about Capricorn, and we're talking about corporations. How appropriate. Here, buoy. Hey, Palace and Scorpio. Those patterns you got coming at you are intense and deep. Palace in the water signs is highly psychic. Very psychic. Barbara Boots, 1956 movie was made. I was 9 years old. And the flavor of that film showcased some of the ideas and attitudes that bugged me then and led me to join the counterculture of the 60s. Sharon's got Palace in Gemini. 7th house. Interesting. That'd actually be good to be a therapist or a counselor. Let's see, who else do we have here? Holly Beth, off to work. Well, watch the replay. It'll be here. Hey, I found so much revisit Death of a Salesman after watching Patterns. Interesting. Henry Ford really blurred the lines between producer and consumer. Let's see, who else do we have here? Letro opening hymn using bells. Very interesting. The New York State education system with Regents exams each year. Yeah, the opening scene is fascinating, and it sets the tone for Patterns. Look, Claire's got Palace and Pisces. Look at that. Claire's legit psychic. Look at that. Right there. Wife in movie wanted husband to make that money. So hey, it's part of the story, isn't it? She was pushing them along, wasn't she? Absolutely. Yeah, you come over to Locals. I posted some stuff over there. Well, I posted this in the movie. Plus, I posted some interesting tidbits around Gemini in this. And this is astrological, but it does kind of bleed into the realm of politics a little bit. Right? So we've had Mars in Gemini and Jupiter in Gemini, and we've had brother action. Big time. Right? Tim Waltz's brother came out and said, this man has no business making decisions. Right? If you only knew what he was about. Like, that's his brother talking about Tim Waltz, right? That's brother action. That's Mars in Gemini, Jupiter in Gemini. And even with Trump, like, I found this to be really interesting in that Trump had a younger brother who passed away in 2022 named Robert Trump. And his daughter, Mary, is the one who hates Donald Trump. So he passes away in 2022. And then now he has Robert Kennedy as kind of like this brother in arm, right? Politically. So he loses his physical brother, and then he gains this kind of metaphoric brother in a lot of ways. And it's nothing political. It's really about this astrological time that we're in with Mars in Gemini and Jupiter in Gemini, and this whole kind of twinning and brothers, you know, in arms and brothers at arms. So I posted that over on Locals as well. Fire God is here. Fire God, let me know when you want to start up the coaching again. We'll kick that off. Giselle H, two of my brothers were industrial engineers in plants in Quebec, and B, did a lot of automation production. Automation's been around a long time, and it's there will be another evolution in automation, but it's so there's planned. We know there's planned obsolescence, right? We also know that there is planned scale, like planned technological scale for the economy, and that they can't introduce too many new things to skew, right, the economic scale. And I'm not saying that it's right or good. We just know that that's how the system works. The clear example is that there's a version of the Golf in Germany that gets 73 miles per gallon, but you can't get it here, right? And the reason why is because you have less distances to travel in Germany. And fuel costs more in Germany. So they ratchet up the ability to get more mileage. But the scale of the economy here in this country, well, they won't allow for that golf to be sold here because you would be able to go further and not spend as much money on petroleum. And that's a basic fundamental version of what I'm talking about. The movie Man Who Fell to Earth with David Bowie gets into this. And he's bringing, because he's the man who fell to earth and he's a genius and he starts a company, he's bringing inventions to society that's accelerating the economic scale, the economic cultural scale. And so they basically have to say, look, you got to slow down because you're taking the evolution and development of this mass group of people further and faster than we can control it and make money off of it. So that's a whole other side of it. Grateful Dogs is here. What's happening, Grateful Dogs? Cynthia Cluth just finished the movie. Excellent. And love the old timey movie. It was shot really well too. Shot really, really, really well. Everyone is a great character, not really black and white. There's a lot of truth to that. Loma, Executive Suite is also superb. We're going to talk a little bit about Executive Suite because it comes out around the same time and it has some of these, these big existential questions about are humans and their ability to produce quality work going to get swallowed up by the machine of the corporation. And it's a theme that crosses both movies, but they have very different endings in a lot of ways. Oh, Rod Serling is a Capricorn. We'll talk about that. Let's see, Knight of Cups. We have to check this movie out after work. It's worth it. It's definitely worth it. Let's see. Who else do we have? Look what Sam says. I know I can't work for the Jews because I know the numbers. They can't go cheap. That's so funny. There's a scene in the movie where Ed Begley's character talks about shysters, right? And shysters being involved in the modern process of production in corporations. And it's an interesting commentary, right? And he's using the word shysters as people that are scammers in lending money or leveraging money in ways that ultimately wind up benefiting them. Walter Ramsey equals Ramses. Well, there is a little bit more than that, but you're on the right path. The Ridley antagonistic character reminded me of Charles Dance as Tywin Lannister in the Game of Thrones. Interesting. Very interesting. I noticed a lot of twin symbology. Let's see. Veronica says, I took from the movie that the main character had integrity. Despite the temptations, he ended up being compensated for standing his ground. Not sure if he would continue to hold his integrity. Steve Letro says, the World War I and Korean War fellow. We're still running DC Electric Company the same way as the movie in 1981 to 1999. I worked with Silent Generation as a plumber, so I got it. Cool. Let's see. Giselle H says, I saw how our technical IT managers change. Once they put the IT department on the board, there was a progression. We then became more group oriented for quite a while. That's interesting. That's an interesting insight. Dead Wolf Resistance. He's all lit up again. Yeehaw. Yeehaw. Harry Bowie, did corporate banking and merger acquisition and the savings loan debacle late 80s and 90s left the industry in 1995, couldn't take it anymore. That was brutal. That was predatory. Absolutely predatory. Elizabeth Light Tarot is here. What's happening? What's happening? All right, why don't we get into the movie? Let's get into the movie. Let's get into it. All right. Okay, hold on. Yes. Yes. Okay. So let me just do this one thing here. Hold on. Give me 1 second. One second. All right, hold on. What do I need to do? I just need to make one little change. One little change. Just keep yourself amused for just a second while I just make this one little edit, and we'll get back into it. All right. It's not a major deal, but you know, the Virgo in me says, if you're going to do something, fucking get it right. Am I right? Am I right? I think I'm right. Okay, here we go. I just have to make a slight edit. Okay, I think we got it. There we go. You save that. Is okay. Done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the beginning of the movie, and I'm just going to start to break down like the beginning of the movie, and it's a really fascinating beginning, and it's not even the it has nothing to do with the dialogue. So let's play this a little bit. All right, let's stop right there. Let's stop right there. Let me go back. Let me get my buds in. And here we go. All right, here we go. Okay, so Steve pointed out that the chimes were ringing at the beginning of the film, and this shot is deliberate. If you look at, again, we're just using what we know as the quote unquote semi-modern scale of the height of buildings. So at a certain point in time, these churches, whether or not they're Tartarian churches or whatever, right? Like the churches were the biggest building in the town or the city, right? Or the principality. Like the church at a certain time was the most important thing. Like it towered over everything else. And as a result of that, it was this symbol that man's relationship to God in an ecumenical sense was bigger and larger than anything else. And it provided both a religious and a social order. Eventually, the churches are supplanted by capitals and state buildings, which become bigger. And they become bigger. And the idea that the state begins to supersede the organizing principle of the church and religion, and then the state itself becomes the sort of the center of everybody's universe, right? The state becomes God. And then after the state, and you have these state buildings that are bigger than church buildings, now you have skyscrapers. And skyscrapers are larger than state buildings or state capitals. So the skyscraper becomes the new organizing principle, and the skyscraper is the corporation. And so what you have here is a very deft contrast between religious order, right? So we're taking the state out of the equation, but this is what the opening scene is developing. This is religious order, and then this is a new order. This is the corporate order, which is going to create the new organizing principle. But unlike the religious order, which has thou shalt and thou shalt nots, the corporate order is a lot more fast and loose with those. And what the Briggs character brings to the discussion is something much more akin to what we would call a religious order. That there would be this sense of, what the film is interjecting is this idea of humanity, and that the Briggs character represents the old school, right? Where you always thought about your fellow man or your fellow woman and how something was going to impact them if something on a much larger scale was going to be instituted. And he is much more connected to this world. And Ramsey, the man who is the head of this corporation, is much more connected to this world. And in fact, he is the high priest of this world. So let's keep going here a little bit, and let's see what happens. Let's talk a little bit about Van Heflin. Astrologically, he is a Sagittarius. So his desire to want to speak the truth, demonstrate the truth at an astrological level really comes through his character. In this role, he actually plays a different astrological role. What's also interesting about Van Heflin is that he is in the movie 3:10 to Yuma with Glenn Ford. And in 3:10 to Yuma, he plays the everyman that has to stand up against this tyranny. Glenn Ford is a really bad man. And in one of his final movies, Van Heflin is part of the cast of the movie Airport. And he plays a man who is really down on his luck. And this is really a fascinating sort of bookend for him. Like is this Van Heflin's first movie? I think it might be. I think this is Van Heflin's first movie. And I'm not sure if Airport is his last movie, but it's one of his last movies. And in Airport, he takes out an insurance policy on his life because he's such a failure. Like, he has failed in the corporate world, and he's able to get on the plane with a briefcase that has a bomb in it, and he explodes the bomb on the plane in the movie Airport. You actually see people get sucked out of the door and everything. So it's a fascinating bookend in some ways for Van Heflin. All right, let's keep going here a little bit. So Everett Sloan plays Ramsey, who is the head of the corporation, and Ed Begley plays Briggs, who is the older employee. What's interesting is that Everett Sloan, who is supposedly the oldest person in the movie as the CEO of the company, is actually younger than both Ed Begley and Van Heflin. Beatrice Straight plays Van Heflin's wife, who wants him to be very successful. All right, let's keep going. We can skip this part, but the part you really want to find here is the writer, Rod Serling. We have directed by Fielder Cook. So this is the first day of the character named Staples. Okay, notice that the inside of the skyscraper or the corporate building looks like a cathedral. Like, this is a cathedral-like ceiling in some ways, without the rotunda. So they're making this comment or this commentary that this is the new church. This is the new church, and the high priest of the new church is the head of the corporation. And it also looks very much like a honeycomb, right? And this building is also like a hive. And you have all of these kind of worker bees that are part of the hive. And in some cases, there's even this idea of like the hive mind, which is also very much connected to the corporate world, the corporate mindset.
Good morning, Miss Lanier. This early, you'll have to take the local. All right, Phil.
So there we go, the 40th floor, and that gives you an idea about the hierarchy, right? So we're in the realm of Capricorn. This is all very Capricornian, right? So we're looking at the hierarchy. There it is right there. Purchasing. And not only is he at the top, not only is Ramsey at the top, but Margaret Lanier, who is his secretary, is also above William Briggs, DJ Van Deventer, Harvey Jameson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they're giving you this idea, right? They're showing you how the hierarchy works. And Ramsey is at the top. Not only that, it's his building.
20th floor executive, Mr. Neer.
Thank you, Phil. Good morning, Miss Lanier.
Good morning, Martha.
I couldn't find a cab anywhere.
Such a lovely day, though.
40th floor executive, Ramsey and Company, Miss Stevens. I'm sorry, sir. Our switchboard doesn't open till 9. You should be able to reach him shortly thereafter. And that's correct, sir. Mr. Staples, begin.
This woman is such a tart, right? You just know she's trouble. She's trouble around the water cooler. She is the company gossip.
For the company today. I'll leave you a message on his desk. And would you put this on Mr. Staples' desk, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Staples will be in Mr. Quinn's old office, executive corridor.
Yes, I know.
I said deliver it, not read it.
Yes, ma'am.
She kind of reminds me of Joan from Mad Men, a little bit, but with a flatter chest.
Executive 40th floor, Miss Stevens.
So this is an interesting scene. I'm going to fast forward this a little bit. But the woman that you're about to see, if you haven't seen the movie, is Mr. Briggs's secretary. And they're talking about this new fellow that's coming to work for the company. And you can sense already that she has a sense of anxiety that she may lose her job, right? And this one right here, like, takes a bit of a jab at her. And this gets into this psychology that floats around corporations at times, right? There's always this sense, not in every corporation, but there's always this sense that there are people that are probing for your vulnerability. And there's a form of what I would call the corporate gaslighting involved. So let's watch this play out.
Morning. Hi.
Oh, good morning, madam. I wonder if Marge is going to go to work next door.
Oh, no.
Well, I'm glad I know.
Not there.
Maybe.
Well, they really fixed up a new exec's office for him, didn't they?
Very nice.
A new man. Right next door to your boss. And awfully close to Mr. Ramsey.
So happens it's a new man. What's his name? Staples?
Mm-hmm.
Will be working with Mr. Briggs. That's why they have adjoining offices.
Marjorie, baby, you're awfully defensive. I guess that's because you're worried about your Mr. Briggs.
Run along, will you?
May I have some more cream, please?
The total bitch. All right, here we go. Again, what do we see here? We see the old world, right? We see the old world, and it's contrasting against the new world. And it's 9 o'clock, and it's business time. To me, this is a fascinating part of this movie, right? Where there's this tug of war between the conscience and the morality of the old world and whatever is emerging from this new one. By the way, the number 9 also represents the 9th month, which represents Virgo, which represents work.
Next car, please. Next car. Next car, please. Okay.
So essentially what he's doing here is he's shuttling all these people into other cars so that when Mr. Ramsey arrives, he has a private car.
Next car. Harry, Charlie, Joe, express down. No stops for Jen.
This is our first introduction to Ramsey.
Next car. Next car. Next car, please. Next car. Next car. Good morning, Mr. Ramsey. Next car, please. All right.
Thank you, Lenny.
Yes, sir.
Miss Lydia? Miss Stevens. He's here.
Thank you, Martha. Chief Operator, please. Miss Phillips, you can put this morning's 3 long-distance calls through to Mr. Ramsey. Portland, Dallas, St. Louis offices. Good morning, Mr. Ramsey.
Morning, Miss Lanier. Any messages?
You have calls placed for our Portland, Dallas, and St. Louis offices. Nothing else important, sir. Martin Toole and Dye, you said you'd wire him.
Yes, you'll find a copy in my briefcase. You're right, as usual. Nothing important. I have the Portland report in my briefcase. I want it teletyped this morning to Seattle. Have someone there drive over to Portland and get it to Johnson before lunch. Then run off 20 copies, confidential mimeographing, and have them ready in time for the board meeting. I want it on the agenda. Has Mr. Staples arrived yet?
Not yet, sir.
Delay that meeting until 10 this morning to give you time to get the report mimeoed and distributed. I want it read, and carefully. Get word underground to their secretaries that no one is to count on making any early luncheon appointments. And make a note. Staples is to sit one down from Vandeventer on my left.
Yes, sir.
Let me know as soon as Mr. Staples arrives.
Yes, Mr. Ramsey.
So what he's doing here is he's already arranging Staples at the board table like he's a chess piece, because he wants Briggs out, because Briggs represents a tie to the past that the company cannot afford. And we're going to talk more about it, but let's move forward a little bit. This is the drop off, and the loving wife wishing her husband a great first day. Here we go. And I love that shot, how it starts at the top and it comes tilting down, down, down. And then eventually, not the first car, but the second car enters the shot.
Well, Fred, here we are.
Yeah, here we are. A little different than Mansfield, isn't it?
Now I know what a mother feels like when a child goes to school for the first time.
Oh, goodbye, Mother.
Looks big, doesn't it?
Oh, give me a chance, honey. Maybe I can cut it down to my size. Well, I'm a little late.
Should I call you when I...
No. You, go on home after you finish.
Okay, so I'm going to fast forward. And this is his first meeting with Briggs. And Briggs being played by Ed Begley. Right here. This is his first meeting. Right here.
Outside interoffice conference. Yes, that's fine. Thank heavens, this isn't early American. Busy? No, not at all. Oh, you must be...
Bill Briggs, your next door neighbor.
Yes, of course. Well, I'm certainly glad to meet you, sir. I think Mr. Ramsey told me you'd been sick, didn't he?
Oh, did he? Actually, it's just a pesky stomach that's been acting up on me. You just in from Mansfield?
Yes, they took a house for... sit down, Mr. Briggs.
Settled already? Good. I'm not trying to set myself up as a real New Yorker. Altoona, Pennsylvania, that's where I came from. My first trip home, I was wearing spats. I remember my father not being able to get over it. He says, Bill, he says, you went to New York to see the sights, and instead you become one of them.
Okay, so this illustrates the bond that they're building with one another, right? And he's very friendly with him. Now here, the first thing that happens at a corporate level where he starts to lose his power, he's getting his girl taken from him. So this is a really interesting scene. It's the equivalent of somebody who, like if you're in a fraternity and you're dating a woman and somebody comes in and takes your woman from you, starts dating that woman, it's a form of castration in some ways, right? I mean, so this is what happens here at a corporate level. So let's watch this.
Oh, yes, on the other side, yes.
Mr. Briggs?
What is it, Marge?
I don't know. Mr. Briggs, I think I ought to resign.
Resign? What are you talking about? What happened? What is it, Marge?
Mr. Briggs, I've just been ordered to go over to Mr. Staples as his new secretary.
Temporarily?
No, I don't think so.
Who gave this order?
Miss Lanier,
When?
about 5 minutes ago. I'm supposed to break in your new secretary.
They've picked a new secretary for me?
Yes, I think so.
It's out of the question for you to resign, Marge, to even think of resigning. You're a fine, wonderful woman and a great secretary. That's the reason they want you over with Staples. He'll need someone like you because he's new here and they want him to get into harness fast. Who can tell, Marge? One of these days, that stomach of mine, pretty perverse organ, and I'm tired. You know, as it must to all men.
Mr. Briggs?
Have you any idea who your successor is?
Yes, they've chosen Sylvia Trammell.
Miss Trammell. It is so ordained. So be it.
She's new, but she's supposed to be very good at dictation.
Well, we'll give her a chance to prove it.
Mr. Briggs? If I could only tell you what this job has meant to me, what working with you has meant to me.
All right, kid.
So what's happening here is they're establishing that Briggs is a really good guy, right? He cares. He has core values. She has devotion, loyalty from his secretary, but immediately he's being undercut. Like, this is a total power move that's being instigated from the top by Ramsey. And Ramsey knows this, right? This is all part of the psychological emanation of the corporation. And it is brutal. It is absolutely brutal. So now Briggs is starting to go beneath the wheel. He's getting caught beneath the wheel. So let me keep going here.
Wash up, get your money, and get out of here. And give Mr. Staples all the best you've got in you. I know you will. That's the only way you operate. I like the guy. I have a feeling he's going to carve out a career around here.
Yes, sir. Everybody seems to think so.
All right, so now we're going to get into the board meeting. And this is the first example of where Ramsey goes after Briggs in public. And and he knows exactly what Briggs is going to do. He knows exactly what Briggs is going to say. And he's lying in wait for him so that he can emasculate him. While there's the new fellow who is going to sit at the table at a position that is almost equal to Briggs. All right, let's watch how this plays out.
Welcome back, Bill. Feeling better?
Much, thank you. A little stomach.
Good. I'm glad it's cleared up.
John, don't forget that contract. Can you get it through tomorrow?
I think so. I have a pen. I sent over your office.
First, gentlemen, I'd like you to look over the Mimeo sheet on top. Haverford Mutual had some doctors look into the matter of executive diets. Their findings showed incredible deficiencies. They've gotten up some food tables. I've had them mimeoed. I'd like you to look them over.
So this is how granular he's getting. He's looking at the diets of everybody that is basically there. And then the doctor is looking at food deficiencies and basically saying two things. Number one, I want you to be healthy because you need to be productive. And he's also, in another way, making a dig at Briggs and his ulcer and his lack of health. So he's doing two things simultaneously. He's asserting that these guys need to be healthy, and he's also letting Briggs know you're not healthy enough. Here we go.
As you know, it's been my feeling that a healthy executive is an efficient one. I think it not amiss now to introduce the newest member of our team, Mr. Fred Staples. He's from Mansfield, Ohio. As you all know, he was general manager of Queen City Tool and Die until we took it over. His record there was a brilliant one. He's a production engineer by training, an industrial relations man by instinct. I expect good things from him. Oh, you've probably met everyone, but just for the record, reading from left to right, Mr. Jameson, head of purchasing.
Yes, we met.
Mr. Granigan, controller. Mr. Gordon, head of sales. How are you? Mr. Latham, head of service. Mr. Portier, chief of operations.
Nice to know you.
And Mr. Van Deventer, chief engineer.
How are you? Nice to see you.
Pleasure.
Lots of white privilege there.
Oh, and of course you've met Mr. Briggs,
Oh, yes.
who is our vice president, assistant general manager, in charge of everything that everybody else forgets to be in charge of. Now, gentlemen, you all have before you a copy of the Williamston plant purchase prospectus. Mr. Jameson, did you attach your supplements?
It's right there, Mr. Ramsey, page 17R under process equipment.
And Mr. Granigan, the stock purchase plan I outlined, I have your comments here.
You do, Mr. Ramsey.
Good. Feasible, is it?
Very much so, in my opinion.
Good. Well, that about winds it up, unless there are any further points to be made.
Okay, so we're about to watch the clash of the idea behind the movie. This is a really, really important scene. Not only that, but it starts the ongoing emasculation and even gaslighting on Briggs. Here we go.
I do think, Mr. Ramsey, if we could keep the transaction under wraps for a bit, at least during the preliminaries, you know what'll happen to the stock quotations if it leaks out that we've agreed to purchase.
I've arranged it this way. The stock quotation as of yesterday morning. You seem to be straining at the leash, Mr. Briggs, or am I mistaken?
You mentioned here that probable time of purchase would be sometime in June. Are the plants to be in receivership until then?
That seems to be what it says.
That means 6 months with improper maintenance of equipment.
Oh, I doubt it, Bill. I've had two of my best men out there for the last 6 weeks. Oh, we had a varying voltage problem, but that was taken care of. You know, maintenance-wise, I doubt if there'll be $1,000 worth of deterioration.
How about goodwill?
What about it?
The plant employs 900 men. That's half the working force of the village.
So?
So what do we do with these men? Cover them with cosmoline and put them away in a drawer until we get ready to resume production?
I thought your concern was for the plant.
And what good is the plant without the men? You chop a village payroll in half for 6 months and you might not have a plant because you might not have a village.
Mr. Briggs, if we may be permitted to disregard for the moment the considerations that you have brought up, what about the rest of the plan?
I'd say it was adequate.
Adequate. That, gentleman, is the kiss of death, believe me. I've known Mr. Briggs for a long time. When he says something is adequate, what he means is that it is entirely inadequate.
I must admit to feeling a concern over some 900 men suddenly deprived of a livelihood.
Mr. Briggs, if you would do me the goodness to look at what I consider to be a fairly elementary business principle. By putting 900 men out of work temporarily, we may ultimately employ twice that number in the same town. By cutting production costs as a result, we will then be able to compete more favorably in the market. Thus, we'll be able to sell more goods. We're not going to ruin that town, we're going to make it. I should think, Mr. Briggs, that after 30 years, you'd be able to think beyond the tongue-clucking stage and come up with something resembling an analytical point of view.
I was under the impression I'd given you a point of view.
I saw none. I perceived what amounts to a rather emotional little tidbit that was decidedly more charitable than cooperative and by no means thought through. I asked, I believe, for an objective view of a business venture. From you I got, and I seem constantly to be getting, a very negative response of any at all. Adequate, I believe you said. Well, Mr. Briggs, this little move will save us conservatively $500,000, which we'll be able to put back into the business. I must say you take a liberal view of adequacy.
I didn't intend to make a central issue out of this, but I did feel it important enough to air in this meeting.
Well, you have aired it in this meeting.
I think it's a good thing you did. But I think, Bill, we're pretty much of one mind about it now.
And we may assume the matter is closed now. Mr. Briggs?
So to cap that off, he's basically saying that your point of view is charitable and this point of view is corporative. And this goes back to this idea at the beginning of the film where there is this contrast between the church and the skyscraper. And Briggs represents the church. Astrologically, I'll show you what else it represents in a minute. Now he's going to ask Staples what he thinks of it.
How about you, Mr. Staples? Do you have an opinion?
No, I think not, Mr. Ramsey.
Why not?
Well, frankly, it's a little out of my grasp at the moment. I don't know anything about the firm, its corporative setup, reasons for bankruptcy, or for that matter, its product. I'm afraid I'll have to pass.
Good answer. I respect thoughtful judgment, Mr. Staples. Congratulations.
So he's already pitting the two of them against each other. And that's actually the right answer, believe it or not. He's just not qualified to make a decision or to make a presumptive statement on the deal, right? But at the same time, Ramsey is giving him kudos while he is chopping Briggs down to size. Okay, so I'm going to move forward in the movie, and there is a pretty interesting scene where he works together with Briggs on this report, and I'm gonna bring it up here.
November 7th? Fine. Look, I'll see you in the dining room. Okay, good. Put that on my calendar, please. Now then, what'd you get those wires off?
Yes, sir.
Good. Right after lunch, I want you to set up a conference call with Ramsey, Jameson, myself, with Frank Daring in Denver.
Got a minute, Fred? Sorry, Marge. This is urgent. It's about that NLRB vote in Portland.
What about it?
Ramsey's grumbling about it. He thinks it's premature.
Premature? What's he talking about? He's had that plant running on wishful thinking for 19 months now. We've got a labor problem.
So this is way, like, the interesting thing about the movie is that it moves ahead very quickly, and it puts you in the scene. Like 19 months have gone by, and he's deeply involved in the corporation at this point, right? So there's not a lot of minutia that goes on.
Now, they're all primed to explode in our face. Now, look, Bill, you better walk in his office with a great big neon sign, strike, you know? Then tell him I've got a little estimate worked out that it'll cost us conservatively $4,000 a day if that plant goes out.
Oof, you know how that'll hit him.
Yeah, well, you go in there and dig up the ground, and I'll follow you with a bulldozer, and we'll plow him under. No, we've got 800 big lumberjacks out there, and if they go, that'll do it big, you know. This won't be any one-week picket. This thing could go on for a year with no strain at all. You walk in there, set the charge, and I'll be in to light the fuse, huh?
Fine.
So again, this shows how they're working together, right? And they go deeper, and he creates this report. And this is where his wife, they're at a party, and his wife, this is Staples now, allows Ramsey, this is a major turning point in the film, Ramsey to read this report. So let's just watch this scene, because it's a very pivotal scene.
The coffee will be ready in just a little while.
Fine. You know, my father's recipe for coffee was to mix salt and chocolate with the grounds, cook them all up together. He'd never drink anything else.
Sounds wonderful.
They serve it at a small downtown restaurant I eat at occasionally. I must remember.
So she is invested in her husband's progress, which is why she's allowed him to go into his office and read his report. Hey, as a projector, as a 2.4 projector, I'd fucking blow my lid if that happened. I swear to God. But here's what goes down.
Remember to mention it to Fred. You said he was a confirmed coffee drinker?
Dedicated.
Fine. He's quite a young man, this husband of yours.
Have you had a chance to read much of the report? Of course, it isn't finished yet.
Well, thank you for letting me see this much. Not according to Miss Post, I suppose, at the dinner party, but it makes me extremely proud of my judgment.
So happy. He's been worried about it.
Nancy.
Will you excuse me?
All right, so here comes Fred, and he's going to have a little tussle with Mr. Ramsey. It's an important part of the movie, and when we get to the astrological part, I'm going to show you why. Here we go.
Wonderful party, you two. Makes me think I should get married.
Oh, don't do anything as drastic as that.
Wonderful having you, Ed. Come again soon.
Will you try keeping me away? I'll see you at the office
Yes,
tomorrow, Fred.
bright and early.
Good night.
Yeah. Jamie, you don't have to go yet. Stick around a while. It's early.
Of course, I'd love to stay all night, however.
We're going home. Can't get him out of here, Nancy. Usually he leaves office parties as soon as the canapes are passed.
I thought everybody behaved very well.
I thought so.
Gotta give them credit for that.
Not again.
I was beginning to like all of them.
Will you come over and see us? Certainly. Come over during the day? You know, nowadays, Jamie never gets home at all. I think we wives ought to form a union.
You're right. We
Good
should.
night, dear.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
All right, let's get to the office scene. Here we go.
And some of it is better than good. Of course, I can't say that I agree with all your conclusions, but I listen to arguments. It'll be good to hear arguments for a change. Good arguments.
Well, I can't tell you what a relief that is. We really sweat that one out.
Fred, I like a man to show initiative. I like a man who's not afraid to think a new thought, to take a different kind of step on his own. With your permission, I'll borrow this extra copy of your report just overnight. But for now, I can say I'm very impressed.
Well, of course, we haven't finished this thing yet, but Bill and I feel that another week.
Bill? You mean Briggs?
Yes, sir. Well, we work together on this.
Oh, come now, Staples. I pride myself on my sense for style. I can link what I see with what I know to be peculiar to a certain individual. And I know Bill Briggs' work. I've been exposed to it since I was of voting age. This isn't his style. It isn't his brand of thinking.
Well, I don't know what Nancy could have told you, but Bill and I work together.
Fred, learn to accept success. It's tougher sometimes than learning to accept failure. Don't take half of your accomplishment and hand it out gratuitously to the man on your left who hasn't the stuff to do it on his own. That's charitable, humane, and it makes you feel good, but it's not business.
See, that's the second time he's brought this up. It's charitable, humane, but it's not, it makes you feel good, but it's not business. And Ramsey is unwavering in his approach. He is not a humanist whatsoever, but I'm going to give you a bit of a different angle on him at the end. And you may disagree with my conclusion around Ramsey, but he's actually a lot more of a humanist than he lets on. But it's with a twist. So you're going to have to bear with me a little bit here. We're going to get through this. But this is important because Staples' character is about like cooperation, collaboration, and balance. Right? So I'm going to start to let the cat out of the bag a little bit here. Right? What sign do we associate with collaboration, cooperation, and balance? Question mark, rhetorical question. It's Libra, right? This is the role that Staples plays. And even when you look at the word Staples, the name Staples, right? A staple is something that holds two things together, right? It also is connected to the word stable, right? And it stabilizes something. And when you think of Libra, right? Like Libra kind of stabilizes the chart, right? It stabilizes the upper part of the chart from the bottom part of the chart. And they're working on this report in collaboration. So Staples is actually performing the role of Libra in this movie. He's trying to be fair, right? Because he wants Bill to get credit. Ramsey, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag here too. Ramsey is playing the role of Aries. And he just is moving in one direction. He's about the individual, and he's about the quote unquote excellence of the individual. So we're going to get more into the astrological connections as we go through the film. So let me play this and we'll get through this and we'll keep going.
Mr. Ramsey, I'd like to clear up one point.
There'll be a meeting on Tuesday, Fred. We can discuss the report then.
I assure you I don't want any undue credit.
I never extend undue credit. Ask anybody. Ask your friend Briggs. You think I'm tough on him, don't you? I am tough on him.
I think Bill is. I think he's a good man.
He was. And grandfather clocks were good clocks, and Stanley steamers were good automobiles, but you can't run them in competition today.
I must say that I like some of his ideas very much. Very much indeed.
So do I. Some of them. Not many.
Still, a man with Bill's experience and... I don't know, I think he'd be very hard to replace. I'll see if that coffee's ready.
Are you serious, Fred? Briggs would be hard to replace? Do you honestly think that? And why do you think I brought you on here from Mansfield on such short notice? Do you think that was a whim? Is that what you think? Fred, you're Briggs' replacement. I thought you understood that. I'm expecting his resignation. I don't like to prolong these things. They're unpleasant and personal no matter what tack you use. And under no circumstances could I or would I undertake to fire him.
So he's just let the cat out of the bag. And she's like, oh, how's it going? How's it going? Did you promote him yet? Are we making more money? Will I get to buy more nice dresses and jewelry? Like, that's exactly what's going on with her. So here we're seeing, like, it's starting to come out now. The Staples character is Libra, right? He's kind of caught between worlds. He's caught between this corporate world and he's caught between this more humanistic world that Briggs represents. And of course, Ramsey, the Ram, right? Ramsey the Ram is Aries. Staples is stable. He binds these two worlds together. Now, Briggs is an interesting name because when you think of the name Briggs, what do you think of? You think of being in the brig, right? You think of somebody who's being imprisoned or, you know, in the hoosgow, right? That's what they used to call it. That's what, to me, that's what Briggs represents. Like he's in a very different position in the chart. And when we get to this certain point, I'll show you what position he's in. So here we go. Let's keep going. Now, I'm going to fast forward this. And she's like talking to him about their future. Here we go.
Yeah, I'll take something a little more. A little misrepresentation for one thing. A little switch in authorship for another. You told him I'd written that report.
I did not. I told him Bill had helped you.
But Nancy, this is Bill's basic idea.
Oh, the same set of ideas that he's had for years. I gathered that much. You gave it life. You made it work. You made it practical.
Even so, Nancy, I don't want any part of it.
Oh, Fred, I happen to know what you contributed to this. I also know that you can't stand winning if you have even a nodding acquaintance with a loser.
I don't like stepping on another human being to get into a capital gains bracket. Ramsey's stalking that poor guy like an animal. He'll whip him to death if he has to make him resign.
I didn't hear you tell Mr. Ramsey that he was mistaken. I didn't hear any clear-cut defense of Mr. Briggs. If you don't want to be successful, go and tell that to
Nancy,
Mr. Ramsey. He'll give you a room, and you can check in at 7 o'clock every night, but don't
now,
tell
look,
me.
I don't want to argue about this.
Neither do I. I just want you to answer me. Did you tell him that your wife was mistaken? Did you tell him that you were taking vows for something you did not do?
No. No, I didn't.
Why not, Fred? Why not?
Because I want the job.
Thank you.
Wow. Now that is an admission right there, right? Like he will stand by Briggs for as long as he can. But there is this Marianas Trench where he has to submit to his own ambition, right? And I think the wife is playing a very interesting role here. She's playing an incredibly interesting role in that she is helping him realize something about himself, that he's struggling. He's struggling to advance his position over the misfortune of another human. And I don't know if anybody in the audience has been in that position before, where you're ascending and somebody else is descending. It's a very uncomfortable place to be, because you understand that you're in that role, or maybe you're in the part where you're descending and somebody else is ascending. And that's even probably twice as difficult than to accept the fact that this is happening, and you may like that person, and you may think that that person is fair and humane and has done an incredible job. But at the end of the day, this is the velocity of progress in some ways, right? So now he's finally admitting to himself that he wants the job. And it took her to get him to admit that. And now he has to deal with his conscience around this. This is a really fascinating dilemma. And we're in the realm of Libra here, because not only is he trying to work out his partnership with Briggs on the report, but he's also trying to work out his partnership with his wife and what that means, and what he is in many ways bound to her to provide. And in this world, even though it's filled with mid-century modern and, nice glittery, shiny things around her neck and kind of plunging shoulder lines, this is primeval, right? She is telling him, you have got to go out and you have got to go slay the biggest beast in the wilderness, so that you can provide for me and for us, right? That's essentially what she's telling him. She doesn't want a couple of stalks of celery. She doesn't want a few, root vegetables that he's able to dig up somewhere. She's basically saying, I want you to take down the mastodon. And you want to take down the mastodon. And I'm here to remind you that that's what you really want to do. It's a fascinating scene. And not only does she want it because of her, she wants it because of him. And she wants to be proud of him, right? She wants to be able to, in essence, relate to his power, right? That's what she wants. She wants to relate to his power. So in this regard, they're working out the balance of their relationship. And she wants to be the woman, and she wants him in this model to be the man. It's a really pivotal scene in the movie. Now, here's where he's talking about to his son, and he keeps missing these really important dates with his son. And this is also a fascinating scene, because what we know about Briggs is that we don't see any woman in his life, right? He does not have this wife who is literally, and this, you'll find this to be fascinating, who's literally egging him on to take this job and to stake his claim in the corporate world. We don't see any of that with Briggs, but we see a couple interactions with Briggs and his son. There's an earlier scene which is fascinating, because Staples gives his son a shotgun for Christmas. And it's a fascinating sort of exchange, right? It's like the shotgun represents power, and it represents the phallus. And the son is really excited over the fact that he can go shooting with Staples, because he doesn't get tired like his dad. And it's a very interesting and somewhat painful scene to watch, but it's a really, really important part of the movie. And again, right, there's these themes that are sort of the undercurrent. The gun represents Aries, and the ability to handle the gun represents masculinity. And Briggs can't do it. He can't do it. He can't even take his son to a baseball game. And remember, there's no feminine character in Briggs's life. He's living He's almost living in a jail cell in some ways. Now, watch what happens here and what he has for breakfast.
Call me if you can't, Dad. It's important.
I'll make it this time, son. Can't you have another glass of milk and maybe tell me about last night's doubleheader?
I'd be late. Wish I could. So long, Dad. Take it easy.
Sure.
So remember, Bernays knew that the egg was the symbol of fertility, that it was the symbol of femininity. And with the absence of any feminine, what does he do? He cracks eggs and puts them in his milk and he drinks them whole. And people would do this back in the day, and some people still do, right? But in the scene before this scene, we saw Staples and his wife was literally egging him on, right? Egging him on to admit that he wanted the job. He doesn't have anybody here like that. So he literally has to provide the nourishment of the feminine with the cracking of the eggs and the milk. It's a very interesting, he's at a deficit. Like, he's realizing that he can't win. He's having this understanding, this moment, this dark epiphany that he can't win. And it manifests in this scene right here, this very dark scene. Check out the lighting on this scene. Now, he's supposed to be meeting his son for a baseball game, but he can't. Like, he's tapping out. And here it goes.
Good evening, Sally.
You can hear the church bells in the background, right? Again, there's that sound of the ecumenical time, the sacred time.
Paul?
Hi, Bill.
Hi, Fred. I thought it was my son. He's going to pick me up. Got time for a cigarette?
Sure. What are you doing here? I thought you were going to the ball game.
I've had a miserable headache since dinner. So I sent Paul on to see the game alone. He's going to pick me up.
How long you been here?
Couple of hours, I guess.
Can I get you an aspirin or something?
Oh, no. It's much better now. Anyway, it gave me a chance to look over the supplements you did for the report. I think Ramsey's right, Fred. You may be an engineer by diploma, but you're a crackerjack industrial planner by instinct or something.
Coming from you, Bill, that sounds real good.
No question about it. Some of your suggestions were great, Fred. Really great. I've incorporated them verbatim. I like your approach, Fred. You think of people in terms of the human factor, not just logistically. Something I've never been able to make Ramsey understand. Anyway, now he can't complain. I turn in the same report every year. He won't be able to say that this year. Join me, Fred?
No thanks, Bill. I've got to pick Nancy up for supper and that long drive home, you know.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting old. I used to be pretty tough. Still tough, I guess. But every now and then I get tired. Tired of arguments, tired of battling, tired of the whole bloody mess with all this fancy organization and super finagling. Oh, I know it's legal and modern and all that. It's what they call the trend, isn't it? In the old days, things were a lot simpler.
Businesses grow, Bill.
This business didn't grow. Not since old man Ramsey passed on. It's been added to. That's not growth. It's just plain acquisition, a business of stock transfers and bank loans, manipulated by hired shysters and their sharpshooting accountants.
and organized and controlled by a barracuda like Walter Ramsey. You sure you won't have a snifter, Fred? I wish you would.
No. Well, times change, Bill. You know that.
But do they always change for the better? Old man Ramsey.
Businesses grow, Bill.
This business didn't grow. Not since old man Ramsey passed on. It's been added to. That's not growth. Just plain acquisition, a business of stock transfers and bank loans, manipulated by hired shysters and their sharpshooting accountants, and organized and controlled by a barracuda like Walter Ramsey. You sure you won't have a snifter, Fred? I wish you would.
No.
So Fred doesn't want to drink with him because he's a loser. And he knows that at this point. Right? So he would be indulging in his own, it's going. He would be indulging in his own despair. Right? So he won't do it. This is like a communion. This is like drinking poison together. And he won't do it. Not even in Briggs's worst moment of need. So here we go.
Well, times change, Bill. You know that.
But do they always change for the better? Old man Ramsey could walk down a production line and call every man by his first name and get called by his first name in return.
I know that feeling, believe me.
He didn't need public relations experts. Honor was enough. Character. And he never sold a share of stock in his company either. Not till the Depression came along and he had to raise cash or go under. And do you know why? Because he would not lay off one single man. That's the kind of man Jim Ramsey was. Now I sit in that fancy conference room with Jim Ramsey's son. I sit there and I see all the old man's principles, all his beliefs, every single thing holy to him, jobbed off by this spindly little financial wizard, this wall-eyed, ice-coated little rooster who knows more about debentures than he does about the human heart.
Bill.
I'm all right.
Take it easy.
I'm all right.
You're going to work yourself up.
I'm all right. Sit down, Fred.
The acting here is superb, by the way.
Sit down quietly and be a nice, sympathetic friend and associate. I'm wondering if you're as good a human being as you are an industrial relations man.
He doesn't like you, does he?
No.
Bill, has it ever occurred to you to resign?
Of course it has. 1,000 times.
Why don't you?
What?
Resign. You can't take the chance of letting this man fire you.
On our level, you don't get fired. You know that. After 30 years of productive work, they can't say to a man like me, all right, now get out. They just can't do that. So what do? They create a situation. A situation you can't work in and finally that you can't live in.
Sounds like Biden.
Where there's tension, abuse, small humiliations. It all starts out on a scale so subtle, so microscopic, that at first you can't really believe it's happening at all. But gradually the thing begins to take shape. The pieces fit together, all the little bits, and it becomes unmistakable. They chip away at your pride, your security, till you begin to have doubts, and then fears.
So the problem with Briggs, let me just bring this into the discussion here. This is Briggs, and I went through and I mapped out like who these characters are in terms of their astrological assignation. And Briggs is inverted Capricorn. He takes up the Cancerian position in this dynamic, right? So if Ramsey, which is the Ram, and he's Aries, is on one side, and Staples, who is trying to be collaborative and be a bridge between being humane and holding on to human values versus being completely corporate and doing what's right and best for the corporation, that means that Briggs would be down in the bottom of the chart. He would be in the fourth house, right? He would not be Cancer though, right? He would not be Cancer. He would be inverted Capricorn. So why do I say that? Because his role at a certain point in time, let's say when Ramsey comes on board, right? He's part of an older time, right? He's connected to his father, and his father ran the business in a way where he could run the business in that way. But Ramsey knows that that's not where business is headed, right? So he has to run it in a way that keeps the business competitive with other businesses. And he's going to just ram ahead and do that regardless of older principles or values. He's not running his father's company. So Briggs, his role would have been to ascend to that Capricornian level, which would be, okay, I'm going to move from this idea of the past. I'm going to bury my sentimental ideas about what it is to be humane and to think of the workers or to think of the human cost of running a corporation. But he can't do that. He can't do that. He can't ascend to the top of the chart. So what happens is he becomes not Cancerian, but inverted Capricorn. And as a result, he descends into the bottom of the chart. And the reason why he's not fully Cancer is he doesn't even have a home life, right? He doesn't have a strong relationship with his son. He keeps missing baseball games. He doesn't take his son shooting. Who's the one that takes his son shooting? It's Staples. So he's not even really Cancerian. He's a man that's living in a no man's land. He's not Cancer. He's not domestic at all. He's also not banging the drum to run the corporation in a way that is more in alignment with Ramsey, who is the Aries. So he's inverted Capricorn. That's who he is. And it's painful to watch. It's almost as if he's moved into this fourth house position, but he's not even very good there either. So he's in the fulcrum between Ramsey and Staples, and he's there by default, right? Not by choice. His choice was to say no to being able to move into this modern representation of the corporation. He's the church, right? That's why when he walks, this is why when Staples walks into this darkness, you're hearing the chimes of the church. You're hearing the church bells because it's a different time. And this is what Briggs represents. He represents somebody that's connected to a different time. He can't. Now, some people will say, well, that's good, right? That he's maintained his values. But he doesn't really maintain his values. If he'd maintained his values, he would have resigned. And he would have said, this isn't my world anymore. And I'll spend more time with my son. I mean, it's probably pretty clear that being in this position for the 20 odd years that he has been in this position, that he'd be able to, be well financially. And he could just say, you know what? It's a young man's game. It's time for me to move aside. But he can't, because if he does that, then Briggs will win. And he has too much pride invested in Briggs winning. But he also doesn't have enough ambition to beat Briggs, right? And you'll see what happens very quickly here. This is a very powerful scene. This is what he really wants to do with Briggs. Let me play this. What?
No sound.
Oh, I don't know why there's no sound. I don't know why. All right, I've just been told there's no sound on the video. Wow. I don't know why. This is a really important scene. Let me reboot the video. Don't go away. Yeah, let's hang in there for a second. I'll be right back. Don't go away. We'll go back to the video. Here we go. Your screen's lost connection to audio share. Try sharing your screen again. Okay, so we lost the audio share. We'll try it again. Let's get it back. And let's go here. Let's go back to me. And where are we here? Hold on, wait. History. Okay, hold on 1 second. All right. Let's get back. Able to do a screen share. We'll try this one more time. I apologize for that. And let's go.
Because I'm weak, I guess. Because I'm 62 years old and I don't think I could get another job.
Let me go back because he's asking him why he doesn't quit. Here we go.
The conference room with Jim Ramsey's son. I sit there and I see all the old man's principles, all his beliefs, every single thing holy to him, jobbed off by this spindly little financial wizard, this wall-eyed, ice-coated little rooster who knows more about debentures than he does about the human heart.
Bill.
I'm all right.
Take it easy.
I'm all right.
You're going to work yourself up.
I'm all right. Sit down, friend. Sit down quietly and be a nice, sympathetic.
Here we go.
I wish I could understand why you go on taking it.
Because I'm weak, I guess. Because I'm 62 years old and I don't think I could get another job. How's that strike you?
How do you think?
Once in a while, I have a dream. I dream I'm sitting in that conference room and he starts working me over. I'm just smiling, see? Perfectly calm, and I'm taking it.
Watch the lighting here. The lighting here is amazing. Here we go.
I don't show the slightest resentment. And then without any change of expression, I get up out of my chair and I walk over to him. And I say, Ramsey.
Bill,
Ramsey! Bill! Ramsey, I say, and then I smash him. Bill! And then I smash him again. Bill, get a hold of yourself. And I hit him again. What's wrong with you? And I hold him up. Bill! Get up, Ramsey, I say, I'm not through. Bill! It's the kid. He's coming to pick me up. Fred, I don't want him to see me, not like this.
You're all right, Bill. Just sit down now.
No, he can't see me like this. Fred, help me. Help me.
All right, I'll take care of him. You just lay low for a minute. I'll see he gets home.
Tell him I left early to get some Bill, please be quiet. Please, Fred, hurry. Be quiet.
Oh, it's me, Paul.
Oh, hi, Mr. Staples. Man, what a place by night. Where do they keep the caskets?
How you doing, partner?
Dad said I should drop in and pick him up.
Oh, well, he went on home.
Interesting choice of language. Where do they keep the caskets?
He needed a little rest.
Oh, good. He's under orders not to work late. Can't seem to keep away lately. Always work, always worrying. No wonder he's number 2 man.
Suppose I drop you off at Grand Central,
Swell, thanks, Mr. Staples. Ever since I can remember, he's been married to this place. Mom used to say the same thing. They were great together, Mr. Staples. Mom and Dad, they used to yell and argue and carry on. He was a fighter. It was great growing up. I remember.
Oh, so they were great together. He has no domestic life whatsoever, right? So he's a man caught between worlds. He is inverted Capricorn. All right, here's the big meeting. And this is where the spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, this is where everything pivots.
The major projects during the period of aforementioned being the Huber Petroleum Refinery, the Sterling Cast Airs Refinery, the Chatham Nickel Smelter Company, the Henderson Valley Dam, the Swing Carbon Steam Plant, and the New England Canadian Natural Gas Pipeline.
Good report, Van.
Thank you.
I got a real feeling of activity during your reading. The next item of business is the project's proposal report. Clearly of the greatest single importance on our docket this morning.
By the way, this Everett Sloan guy is incredible. The guy who plays Ramsey, I got a real feeling of activity from your report. It's incredible the way he says that. And behind him is the city, right? Like the entire world is, and it's almost like he's channeling the energy of the world coming through that window. All right, here we go.
Morning. I must say, and I'm sure you'll all agree, that I am not given to enthusiasms at the drop of a submission. But of this, I feel impelled to say that it is unique in effort, in genius and thought. To Mr. Fred Staples of our organization goes my heartfelt thanks and
Whoops. All right, so what happens here, I'm sorry, is that they're both supposed to have their names on the report, and that doesn't happen. And he gets credit for the report. This is a big turning point in the movie because Briggs believes that he's going to share in Fred's glory because Fred and him are supposed to have the name on that report. And basically, Ramsey crosses Briggs's name off. It just has Fred Staples on there. Here we go.
The Swing Carbon Steam Plant and the New England Canadian Natural Gas Pipeline.
Good report, Van.
Thank you.
I got a real feeling of activity during your reading. The next item of business is the project's proposal report. Clearly of the greatest single importance on our docket this morning. I must say, and I'm sure you'll all agree, that I am not given to enthusiasms at the drop of a submission. But of this, I feel impelled to say that it is unique in effort, in genius and thought. To Mr. Fred Staples of our organization goes my heartfelt thanks and congratulations. Besides being our newest member, he seems to be shaping up as among our most astute. This set of proposals is ingenious, comprehensive, and fresh. Congratulations. Your success is a reaffirmation of my own judgment.
Mr. Ramsey.
Of my own good judgment, I may add.
Mr. Ramsey.
I prefer not to be drenched with modesty, Mr.
This
Staples.
is not modesty, just the extension of credit where it's due. Bill here is as responsible as...
Is your name about to be used in vain?
I don't think Fred would use my name in vain.
And it's refreshing to find someone not suffering from over-modesty.
What I was trying to say is that we worked on this project together. It's a combined effort.
I'm sure it was.
Well, as long as that's understood.
Oh, it is. It's just that I feel reasonably competent to assess individual performances and to single out those that I feel should be singled out, with all due regard for Mr. Staples' concern for his fellow man. Now then, if Mr. Briggs' ego has been sufficiently nourished...
I don't think Fred brought this out to feed my ego.
Oh, well then whatever it was that prompted his precipitate dash to your defense.
There was no dash to my defense.
Why don't we drop the thing, Mr. Briggs? I hate becoming entangled in absurd little personality conflicts. I'll put a star by your name on the front cover if that'll make you happy.
My name is no longer on the front cover.
Mr. Briggs.
You're twisting the entire thing to make it appear as if I were grubbing for some sort of recognition.
Mr. Briggs.
I find it unfair, Mr. Ramsey.
We have a full agenda. If you feel so bruised that you must persist in prolonging this discussion...
Mr. Ramsey.
Let me finish, Mr. Staples, if I may. We have only one purpose here, to work. We cannot hope to accomplish this if we must be continually subjected to these singularly unbecoming strains and tensions, these childish claims and counterclaims. Mr. Briggs, I ask you a simple question. Is it or is it not within my province to credit a man with a job well done?
Of course it is.
Then may we drop it now?
Only if it's clearly understood that I don't submit to any of these calculated discolorations of a man's worth.
As to a man's worth, Mr. Briggs, I think I've proven myself a competent judge. I ask you to recall that I built this business from a scratch pile of used lumber and a few machines into a giant. And I made few mistakes in doing it. Few mistakes in business and few mistakes in judging men.
Well, you've made one this time. This report...
I refuse to engage in a running fight because a supposedly responsible official of this company persists in wasting time haggling over credit.
That is not fair.
I was not haggling over credit.
This is a joint report that we worked on.
Me what's true and what is not true. What am I, some kind of idiot that I can't recognize another man's thinking? Whatever your abilities in the past, Mr. Briggs, your work hasn't shown this stamp of originality and talent in 10 years. A man slips, clutches, he loses his grip, he tries to hang on by someone else's.
You have no right to say that. Bill, will you please speak up?
Do, by all means, Mr. Briggs.
Pivotal moment here. This is his chance, right? This is his chance to somehow regain his human dignity, all the things that he believes in, right? These principles, these guiding principles that are outside the corporate space. Remember, church time, sacred time, the old world, the new world. This is his opportunity to reclaim his own dignity and his own humanity. He can say, I will not take this any longer and I resign. That would be the strongest thing that he could do. It would be what obviously Ramsey wants him to do. Ramsey is like an Aries. He keeps ramming. He's ramming away at his self-esteem because he knows that Briggs is not a part of this world now. And he cannot fire him because it is unbecoming of somebody in Briggs's standing. And this is what he doesn't do.
You think I'm mistaken, do you? Shall I go through 150 pages and point out to you line by line where another man has taken over for you? Has had to take over for you?
And I can point out sections of this report that I never had to touch.
Had to, Mr. Staples? Of course you can. Let me show them to you. I've seen them submitted year after year. Principles and precepts for better business. Mr. Briggs' yearly platitudes. But you translated his unworkable, well-intentioned philosophy into tough business procedure. You make it work.
Ramsey!
Mr. Briggs, I will not tolerate insubordination on any level. And if anyone here finds that intolerable, he has the God-given right to offer his resignation.
And that's where he should have offered his resignation and made a good show of it on the way out.
Bill. Please.
Mr. Ramsey, I had no intention of seeming insubordinate.
Meeting is adjourned.
All right. So we cut to the chase. Spoiler alert. What happens to Bill?
Bill, can you hear me?
Little bottle of pills. Cold. Office.
Get some water. Yeah. Flanagan, get an ambulance. I've called out the Blake. Don't move it.
Fred, he's still giving orders. Do me a favor, Fred.
What, Bill?
Tell him. Go to.
And that's it. That's it. He's gone. So he wants to quit. He wants to move out. He wants to get out. And here comes his wife again.
Nancy, what are you doing here?
I called your office. Then there wasn't any train, so I drove here.
How did you know where to find me?
They told me at the hospital. Does Paul know?
Yes, he's with Bill's sister. He's all right.
So Paul's the son.
Do you have something else?
Have you had anything to eat?
Hmm?
Have you eaten anything? Fred, what happened?
Nothing. Not a thing. Except a murder. There were witnesses, too, plenty of us. And no one lifted a finger to stop it.
Fred.
Nancy, I know I didn't lift a finger.
Don't know. I'm not going to have you going around in sackcloth and ashes for something that you did everything in your power to stop. You begged him to resign. You know that. What more could you have done? What more could anyone have done?
Nancy, I think you'd better go home. Would you take this, please?
Are you coming?
No.
Then I won't go.
I want you to go home and start packing.
Where are we going?
I don't know. Somewhere, anywhere. Just away. There's an awful stink in this town, and we're going to get away from it. Come on, I'll put you in the car.
No, I'm not going to leave you alone.
Nancy, I want you to go home, please.
No, I'm not going tonight. Tomorrow I'll do anything you ask. I'll pack. I'll go anywhere you ask, but not tonight. Not in the state you're in.
Now, look, there's something I've got to do.
Fine. Then we'll do it together.
There we go. There's Libra right there, right? Like we're going to do this together. Remember, Staples is Libra. That's his role in this movie. He's trying to be the mediating force between Ramsey and Briggs. He's trying to be collaborative with Briggs. He is in the midst of this relationship with his wife, who is invested in his present and his future, right? So being Libra, she's not going to leave his side. She is going to go with him. Well, why? Because she doesn't want him to go the route of Briggs, ultimately. So here we go. Let's play this out. By the way, I don't know any hospitals that have bars across the street. And that's it. This is the new church. This is the new cathedral, right? We have stained glass, almost the version of stained glass windows right at the end. And everything has shifted. Like there's light, right? There's light in this scene. And the light is very interesting because it represents like a new dawn or a new beginning. Here we go.
Bill was supposed to go to Lansing tomorrow morning for a meeting with Phillips. You'll have to take his place.
I mean, listen to that. He doesn't say, hey, how you doing? How are you taking this? Right? He's like, Bill was supposed to be on a plane to Lansing tomorrow. You're going to take his place. Like, this guy is fucking ice cold, right? But he's Aries. This is his role. His name is Ramsey, the Ram. He's Aries. He's just going to move forward, right? And he's not going to apologize. He is unapologetic about any of this. All right, watch what happens next.
I believe I've already mentioned that.
Yeah, you mentioned it.
You leave on flight number 116, 832 from LaGuardia. Miss Lanier will meet you at the airport with your reservation and all the memoranda and correspondence pertaining to the negotiation. You'll have 3 uninterrupted hours in the air to familiarize yourself with all the details.
I have no interest whatever in the Phillips matter.
What was that?
I'm telling you that I don't want the job. I'm through. I'm quitting. I resign as of now.
Why?
Because I hate your guts. You used Bill Briggs for a whipping boy. You made him knuckle under and then you beat him to death. You wouldn't try anything like that with me because I'd kill you first.
I'm not a nice human being. What else?
You're nothing but a freak. You'd drive your people into peak efficiency if they can make it or a grave if they can't. Because Bill Briggs lacked the strength
and the capacity. He was second in command. He had a lot of responsibility to hold, and he cracked under
it. It was his business, too.
It's no one's business. It belongs only to the best, to those who can control it, sustain it, nurture it, keep it growing. Right now, it belongs to us because we're producing. But in the future, it belongs to whoever has the brains, the nerve, and the skill to take it away from us.
Well, they can have my share of it right now because I don't want any part of it.
What do you want from me? Apologies? I don't apologize.
Bingo! Aries, the Ram, no apology. He doesn't apologize. There it is, right there. And he's confronting Libra. But these are two, this is amazing. This is totally amazing how this goes down. Watch what happens.
What else? A nice unsullied conscience? You walk out of here with a halo because you spoke your mind? What do you do then? Go to work for some nickel and dime outfit run by nice people who won't challenge you and prod you and goad you and drive you to a height you never even dreamed of? A company where there's nothing to fight for because you're the best and there's no competition? Where everything is handed to you and nothing is worth fighting for? I want you to stay.
I don't think you understand, Ramsey. I don't like you. I don't like anything about you.
I didn't hire you to like me. All right, I'm not a nice person in your eyes. But whatever I am, you learn more, grow more, and do more here with me than anywhere else on earth. I want you to stay because I need help on my level. And you're the only one who's able to function there. Be a conscience for me if you want. Be anything you like. And if it's something I don't like, you'll know about it soon enough. I think you're strong enough to take it. And if not, I think you're strong enough to get out. Name your terms. All terms are negotiable.
I don't think so. Not mine.
All right. I just as soon not waste any time doing trading. As of now, your salary is doubled. Your stock option is doubled right down the line. Your expense account is whatever you make it. Add to that a new title, Vice President.
I want a lot more than that. You're not going to take me on as just another vice president you can push around. You take me as someone who hates you down to the bare nerve. Nothing in the world will ever change that. I'll argue with you, contradict you, fight you in every way I know how. I'll do everything in my power to push you out and take your place myself.
Go ahead and try. Mr. Staples, you have yourself a deal.
Have it drawn up.
No reservations now?
Yes, one. Bill had one pitiful little dream that someday he'd walk in here and break your jaw. I reserve the right to have that wish for myself.
I'll have it drawn into the contract, with a little rider giving me the same privilege.
And that's how it ends. Okay. Now, to me, this is a very, very complex and complicated movie on so many levels, because a lot of us would relate to the Briggs character, right? We would relate to the Briggs character because he's a man of conscience. He's a man of principle. He's a humane man. Maybe some of us would relate to Fred Staples. So let's take a look at Fred here. Right. So Fred happens to be, let's do a little share screen. Fred happens to be Libra, which is what we've designated him as, because he plays the role of balance between Ramsey and Briggs, right? He's working out the relationship between him and his wife. He's also working out the relationship between him and his own conscience. So some people could relate to Staples. Very few people can relate to Ramsey, because Ramsey is a bully. Ramsey is a tyrant. Ramsey is, in some people's minds, a borderline sociopath. And in a very weird way, right? In a very weird way, Ramsey is more human than any of them, because Ramsey understands that the byproduct of their effort is going to result in the growth of the business, which is what they've signed up for, right? They haven't signed up for being charitable. This is not an NGO. This is a business, a corporation, and that certain things happen within the parameters of that world. And at the end, when he's confronting Ramsey, Staples hears from him that I will push you and you will grow beyond anything that you have ever accomplished or achieved. And I'm paraphrasing that there. And what are you going to do? Are you going to walk out of here and go work for some nickel and dime company, feeling assuaged that you were able to speak your mind and live with your conscience? Is that what you're going to do? Like, he's being confrontational and he's pushing Staples to go beyond where he thinks he could go. And Staples fires it right back. And this is what Ramsey wants. Ramsey wants somebody who is on his level that can accomplish things, but won't be a yes man. And Briggs was neither. Briggs couldn't accomplish anything. He could maintain things. He could keep things running, but he didn't have the ability to execute at a corporate level that Staples has. And not only that, but he was kind of truculent, and he was sort of a sour milk yes man. Like, he would have complaints, or he would bring things up that were not part of the corporate model, but he didn't have a strong enough argument to supplant his ideas of being humane or remembering the way that his father ran the company. It's not his father's company anymore, right? This is a very different company in a very different time. So I talked about the movie Executive Action, which takes place 2 years before this. And in that movie, the Staples character is played by William Holden. And there is this fight between William Holden's character and a character played by Frederick March, who is much more like Ramsey. He's very efficient. He's a bean counter. And William Holden's character realizes that if Frederick March's character takes over the company, they'll just make cheap ass products, and that the company will lose its integrity and its significance. And so he eventually winds up creating enough momentum to take on the Frederick March character and then uphold the standard of that company, and that they would continue to create quality furniture products versus being held hostage by a bean counter. The difference between Executive Action and Patterns is that this company doesn't make anything. This company buys other companies that make things, and that they're in the business of taking over businesses and then figuring out how to run those businesses as efficiently as possible so that they stay in business. So the two models are quite different, and the two characters are very different. In Executive Suite, William Holden kind of saves the day, right? He moves up the ranks and he becomes the CEO, and he remembers where he came from. In this movie, Ramsey is still quite in charge, but Staples is now in a different place and has an equal playing field, more or less. Now let's talk about Rod Serling, because Rod Serling is the fourth part of this Cardinal pattern. Rod Serling is a Capricorn. He's born December 25th. So if we took all four of those characters and put those three characters and we put Rod Serling in the mix, astrologically, he's a Capricorn. And so what he does is he has a vast overview of what's happening in the corporate world. And he's looking at these various characters and where they fit in. There's a bit of an positivistic or Ayn Randian quality to this movie, and that in some ways only the strong survive, or the most capable or the most able can survive this world. And Serling understands that. And it's a vicious world. And Ramsey drove Briggs to this point where Briggs is physically overwhelmed. But it would have been in Briggs's best interest to resign. It's not his world anymore. And it's interesting to kind of look at this movie and say, well, this is the path of corporate America. And it's true. It is the path of corporate America. Serling knows this, and he maps it out. But it is not a sentimental view of the past, right? He's looking at the past for what it is. It's a page that's being turned historically. And at the same time, while he is illustrating this dog-eat-dog world that is going to evolve as a corporate ethos, in a strange way, he's also not vilifying it. he's seeing it for what it is. And in a strange way, he's also slightly redeeming Ramsey's character. Ramsey is unapologetically Ramsey. He makes no excuses for who he is. There's a brief moment where he understands what's happened with Briggs, but he knows that Briggs is no longer a part of this world. And in a weird way, he's doing Briggs a favor, doing something that Briggs himself cannot do. Now, astrologically, I looked up the date of this movie and when it was released, and this is really mind-blowing. So if we look at the release date of this film, it's March 27th, 1956. It debuted in New York City. It's more than likely debuting with a matinee. And what do we see here? We see all 4 cardinal points, right? We see the sun in Aries. So this is fascinating. So we have Ramsey, who, by the way, the guy who plays Ramsey, Sloan, is actually a Libra. And the guy who plays Briggs is actually an Aries, which is fascinating, right? They've kind of inverted their roles in some ways. But we see the sun at 7 degrees Aries, bang on, right? At 12 noon, high noon, conjunct the midheaven. And this is what this movie is portraying. It is a 10th house portrayal of Aries. It is not nostalgic. It is unsympathetic, and it is unapologetic, right? So this is really the portrait of the Aries sun right on the midheaven. Look where Mars is. Mars is in Capricorn. It's at 18 degrees Capricorn, and it's conjunct Juno, right? And Juno is the new thing. And this corporate consciousness at this time, for better or worse, is being born, and people are struggling with some of the ideals and the ethos that are a part of it. So we have Cancer on the ascendant at 12 noon on the day that this movie debuts in New York City. Uranus is in Cancer, and it's also retrograding on this day. So it's interesting in that Uranus in Cancer is something that is new, right? Uranus is always this thing that's new, and Cancer is the old. So Uranus is really uncomfortable in the sign of Cancer. And retrograde, it's actually looking back. Like Briggs's character is looking back at the world that was. You know, the father of Ramsey, Jim Ramsey, who started this whole thing. And look where the moon is on this day. It's in Libra. So the 4th house is actually Libra as well. So we have Mars in Capricorn. We're dealing with a Capricornian situation. Corporations are Capricornian. We have the sun in Aries, and the main character is Ramsey. We have the moon in Libra. We've already talked about who Staples is. Or Staples is Libra. And we're watching this conflict being worked out. Moon in Libra, square Mars, right? So we have the moon in Libra, square Mars in Capricorn, moon in Libra, square Uranus in Cancer. And this is exactly what we're talking about. Mars, the ruler of Aries. The movie itself, astrologically, on the day it's released, is the definition of the movie itself. The true node is in Sagittarius, which is Van Heflin's sign. And then we have Saturn also in Sagittarius, right? Sagittarius being reined in a lot of ways in this configuration. We also have the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. This is around the time that Bill Gates is born, because he has this Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. And my God, you know, Bill Gates is the Frankenstein monster of the world that we're talking about here. Now, I am not condoning nor condemning this portrayal of the corporate world in the movie. I'm just simply looking at it from Rod Serling's perspective. He understands it. And he understands that the Briggs character is a thing of the past. And the Staples' character is being dragged into the future, and perhaps even slightly against his will. But he's consenting. He's willing to take on the challenge. And by the way, the Ramsey character likes it. He's happy. He's happy he hates him. He's happy that he has voiced his hate for him. You know why? Because it's honest. And Briggs could not be honest. He harbored his hate in his heart, but he could never be honest. He would take his hate out in these ideas that might have been well suited for his father's company, but had no place whatsoever in the current incarnation of the company, which was Ramsey and Company, right? The Ramsey Corporation. So I think Patterns is a fascinating movie from an astrological perspective. You see it all worked out. You see these cardinal points being worked out. And that Briggs is inverted Capricorn. He's not successful in the corporate world. He's not successful in the domestic world. You know, there's that brief bit of dialogue. Boy, you know, he and my mom used to be good together, meaning that she's not there anymore. We don't know why she's not there. Did she leave him? Did she pass away? And this is something that Serling is really good at. Like, he's getting us to think about what might have happened in Briggs's life. We don't know. We have to fill in those blanks ourselves. But the scene where he's adding the eggs to his milk, right? Milk is also very much a symbol of the feminine. You know, the mother's milk. And the egg is the symbol of the feminine. So there's no one there to nurture Briggs. He has to kind of pathetically self-nurture himself, right? He can't even nurture his own son. He keeps missing these baseball games. Meanwhile, Staples has a wife, and she's playing that role, right? She's actually nurturing his ambition, for better or for worse, right? I don't really have a judgment around this movie. I think it's fascinating. And I think that astrologically, it's all getting worked out here in the chart. Mars in Capricorn, the day it's released, Moon in Libra, conjunct Neptune. So these ideas of balance and fairness, they're getting a workout in the movie. Like, it's squaring Mars and it's squaring Uranus and Cancer, which is retrograde and looking backwards. And the ominous conjunction of Jupiter and Pluto is sitting there as well. And in a lot of ways, the bastard child, not of this movie, but of corporate acceleration, is Bill Gates. Because he's the one who will unapologetically ultimately use his corporate power beyond corporate status, right? He's willing to go beyond Ramsey. He's willing to move into this area where you could call him a technocrat or a demigod, right? The corporate world is not enough for Bill Gates. Like, he has to move beyond those boundaries. So in a lot of ways, this movie represents the metastasized version of somebody who runs a corporation. And it's right there. That's a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. In the second house, by the way, where Bill Gates has it in his natal chart. Venus is in Taurus. So it also represents our relationship with money and power and the things that working for a corporation or working at a high level will buy, right? Fascinating. This is a fascinating movie, and it's a fascinating look into these characters who all play a very pivotal role in this turning of what's happening in America in 1956 and ultimately what's coming. And Rod Serling, being born on Christmas Day, you know, being a full-on Capricorn, 3 degrees Capricorn, he's got the big picture. He sees it. He understands it. And at the end of the movie, there's this marriage between Libra and Aries, right? There's this marriage between Ramsey and Staples. They come together, right? Even the day of the release of the movie, it's a full moon. So this idea of fairness and balance that is kind of at the heart of what Staples is trying to do is like part of the release date. I mean, it's totally fascinating how when we look at the movie and the characters in the movie and even the release date of the movie itself all combine for this sort of meta astro symbology. So I wanted you guys to watch the movie and come to your own conclusions about it, and then sort of hear what I saw and put together. And if anybody's still watching and you want to jump in and chime in and give your own thoughts about the movie, I'm going to put the link in here so that you guys can have a listen, or I can have a listen with you guys. Let me do this. Let me put this in here, and I'll put it right in here. Here you go. So come on in and jump in. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Look at me. I'm totally spazzing out with this light. If you feel like talking about it, jump on in. Let's have a good listen and good little chat here. And Pluto's also back in Capricorn. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. That is such a great, timely notice, right? Pluto's back in Capricorn, and we're kind of going over this idea of the corporate soul and how at a certain point in time, like it was under the microscope, and Rod Serling totally got this. He completely understood it. So again, this is like, you know, a very timely kind of understanding of this very interesting system that we're in. What is the system that we're in anyway? Like, what is this place that we're living in? And I don't know. I find it fascinating. I find all of it fascinating. And when we connect astrology and timelines and certain symbolism to gain a better understanding of this realm, I think it's a great tool. And you know, Pluto is going to move back into Aquarius, and we're moving into a very, very different time. Right? These are the last few days that with Pluto and Capricorn looking backwards that will have a sense of the world that was. Because when Pluto moves into Aquarius, the world that we're going to inhabit is very, very different. And I saw that Martin Armstrong had just released something where, based on his calculations, he believes that this will be the last election that we'll have. And I'm in agreement with him. And I've been saying this for quite a while, that whatever happens after this so-called election, America and the world will be a very, very different place. And how we go about choosing leaders, or leaders are chosen, is going to be vastly different than what we've been accustomed to. So I agree with him with that. And yeah, Pluto Aquarius for keeps. Here it comes. And I would say with Pluto and Capricorn retrograde that we're going to see these bones of the past that are being dug up. Like we're like this is the sort of the final hall of memory of the time that we've been living in. And I think some of it will be very poignant and bittersweet in a lot of ways, because the future is very uncertain with Pluto and Aquarius. And I think that, you know, we talked about 2012, we talked about sort of millennial madness. Pluto and Aquarius has its own sort of mindset that makes that I think is making people very uncomfortable in a lot of ways. I like it. I think it's interesting. Like, even when we look at these groups, so for instance, the Black Pill group, that's all Pluto and Aquarius. and then you have these other groups that are emerging, these other groups that are emerging, and these other groups that are emerging. And we think of Aquarius as being this sort of monolithic structure where it's like, it's a small world after all, or, we'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. And there's this sort of galactic monoculture as a result. And there may be some of that, but I just think of it as like the emergence of all these different groups. And they're all kind of in competition in some ways to assert their will and dominance as to what will be sort of the group that will survive and what will emerge through Pluto and Aquarius. I mean, hello, we got groups of Muslims, we got groups of migrants, we got hell's fucking angels. We got red pills, we got blue pills, we got black pills, we got MAGA, we have Kamalites, right? These are all groups, and we're all witnessing them sort of emerge in real time. Some of them as a reaction to one another. Anyway, I guess that's it. Nobody wants to come in and talk about the movie. Oh well. All right. I'll be back on Tuesday with the astro weather. Things are really speeding up, right? They're even though we have all these retrograde planets, things are really, really speeding up and accelerating. And I really hope that as many of you can make it to our event. It's a really, really cool and interesting time with very eclectic people that don't follow a lot of rules. And it's always been incredibly positive in terms of what we share together and what happens when people leave. Connections are born, relationships are started. Right? It's a really rich sort of temporary autonomous zone. And again, I hope as many of you can come as possible. So that's it. Mods, thank you for everything you do. Chataria, thank you for being here and being really the best chat group on YouTube. And I know that the Franklies are great. I love the Franklies. I love them. They come over here. You guys go over there. The people in Emily's world are really, really great. Like there's a lot of great chat groups, but hey, what can I say? This is our world. So I can be fair and balanced in a very Libran way, but I'll take the Aries stand. This is the best chat group on the internet. All right. Love to each and every one of you. Enjoy your Labor Day, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday. Bye for now.